The broadcast hit Earth like a thunderclap, reverberating through every screen, speaker, and device capable of receiving a signal. A towering figure with silvery skin and glistening eyes appeared, framed by a backdrop of stars that seemed unnaturally vivid. Its voice resonated, smooth yet undeniably commanding, as it delivered the message that would upend human civilization. "People of Earth," it began, its words translated seamlessly into every language. "The Interstellar Coalition has reviewed your species' readiness to join the galactic community. Your technology is crude, your politics chaotic, and your wars primitive. But there is potential in you, a spark we believe can flourish under proper guidance. However, integration requires adherence to our laws." The figure's gaze seemed to pierce through every screen, as if addressing each individual directly. "One such law, integral to our unity, is the Union Accord. This mandates that every adult must form familial bonds with members of at least 2 alien species. It is through these unions that we bridge cultures, ensuring peace and understanding among the stars. Therefore, effective immediately, every Earthling must marry 2 alien partners." The message ended abruptly, leaving Earth in stunned silence. Conversations erupted across every continent, fueled by disbelief, outrage, and a smattering of bizarre excitement. Some dismissed the broadcast as an elaborate hoax. Others scoured the internet for clues about who or what had orchestrated it. But doubts were quickly dispelled when colossal alien ships descended into orbit, their presence undeniable and terrifying. Governments scrambled for answers, launching frantic diplomatic efforts to establish contact with the newcomers. While the alien representatives, an assortment of beings so varied it was dizzying, remained polite and professional, they were unyielding. The law was not negotiable. To join the Interstellar Coalition, humanity had to comply. The alternative? Exclusion from the galactic fold and a future in isolation, vulnerable to more hostile species who might not bother with formalities. For many, the stakes were clear. Earth could not afford to remain a backwater in a galaxy that was clearly teeming with advanced civilizations. Yet, the specifics of the mandate raised a tidal wave of questions. How would these marriages work? Were the aliens even compatible with humans? And most importantly, what would happen to those who refused? In a modest apartment on the edge of a bustling city, a man sat glued to his screen, replaying the broadcast for the 3rd time. He was a skeptic by nature, but the sight of the alien ships blotting out the horizon was hard to argue with. As he sipped his now cold coffee, he considered the implications. He had never been particularly lucky in love, and the thought of suddenly having 2 alien spouses felt like some kind of cosmic joke. And yet, a part of him couldn't help but wonder what were these aliens really like. Elsewhere, a young woman scrolled through social media, her feed flooded with memes and heated debates about the law. Her initial reaction had been a mixture of confusion and anger, but as hours passed, curiosity crept in. Would these alien unions truly foster peace, or was this just a convenient way for the coalition to exert control? She wasn't sure, but the idea of humanity joining a larger galactic family was undeniably appealing. Could it really be that simple? Or was there something more to the law that hadn't been revealed? As the days turned into weeks, the process of implementing the mandate began. Alien representatives set up embassies across the globe, each teeming with diplomats and cultural advisors eager to explain their species' customs and traditions. Matching programs were launched, pairing humans with compatible alien partners based on factors that included biology, temperament, and even shared hobbies. To many, it felt like an interstellar version of a dating app, albeit with significantly higher stakes. Not everyone embraced the change. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with people decrying the law as a violation of human autonomy. Religious leaders grappled with the theological implications, while conspiracy theorists spun wild tales about the aliens' true motives. Despite the resistance, there were those who leaned into the chaos with open minds and occasionally open hearts. Stories began to surface of humans and aliens finding genuine connection, their unlikely partnerships sparking hope that perhaps, just perhaps, the law wasn't as absurd as it first seemed. Still, the doubts lingered. Was this really about unity? Or was there a deeper reason the coalition was so insistent on these marriages? A cryptic comment from one alien diplomat only fueled speculation. The accord is not merely a tradition, it had said. It is a safeguard, one that has protected our galaxy for eons. But a safeguard against what? No one seemed willing to answer. One evening, as Earth's first round of human-alien ceremonies were broadcast live to the world, an uninvited guest interrupted the proceedings. Without warning, a second alien fleet appeared, their ships sleek and menacing compared to the Coalition's elegant vessels. Their arrival sent shockwaves through the planet, and their message was far less diplomatic. People of Earth, their leader sneered, his voice sharp and guttural. The Coalition's laws are a leash, and you are fools to accept it. Do not let them bind you with their so-called unity. Reject the accord, or face the consequences. As the broadcast cut off, panic rippled across the globe. The threat was clear, but so were the risks of defiance. Humanity now stood at a crossroads, caught between the promise of unity and the shadow of rebellion. The question wasn't just who to trust, it was whether Earth could survive the answer. The tension on Earth was palpable as the world tried to digest the arrival of the new alien fleet. Their ships hung in the sky like grim specters, their angular forms a stark contrast to the Coalition's sleek designs. People filled the streets, some to protest, others to demand answers from their governments, and many simply to witness the spectacle above. News outlets scrambled to cover every angle, speculating on the identity of these new visitors and their ominous warning. For most, fear mingled with confusion, as Earth's already fragile understanding of its place in the galaxy was once again shattered. The Coalition's representatives acted swiftly, broadcasting a calm yet firm response to the new arrivals. Their lead diplomat, a tall, crystalline figure whose voice resonated like a melody, assured humanity that the Second Fleet was part of a rogue faction. Their words are rooted in fear and deception, the diplomat explained. They reject the unity we strive for and seek only to divide. Do not be swayed by their threats. Despite these assurances, doubts festered. The Coalition's insistence on the Union Accord already felt invasive to many humans. Now, with another alien group claiming it was a leash, people began to wonder if the truth lay somewhere in the middle. The rogue aliens, calling themselves the Kralon, offered no further communication, leaving Earth to guess at their true intentions. Were they genuine in their warning? Or were they exploiting humanity's vulnerability for their own gain? In the days that followed, life on Earth shifted into a surreal balance of chaos and adaptation. The first wave of human-alien unions had begun, albeit under the shadow of the Kralon threat. Government officials worked tirelessly to ensure the process remained orderly, while Coalition ambassadors conducted endless meetings to ease the public's fears. The Coalition's matching programs continued, pairing Earthlings with alien partners from a wide array of species. Some matches led to quiet, hesitant introductions. Others sparked immediate resistance, with humans and aliens alike questioning the wisdom of such forced bonds. One such pairing involved a reserved university researcher and an alien known as a Virion, whose appearance resembled a cross between a mantis and a swan. The researcher, who had spent years studying microbiology, was initially skeptical of the match, unsure how they could share anything in common. But during their first meeting, the Virion revealed a deep understanding of microbial ecosystems, leading to an animated discussion about Earth's oceans and the aliens' homeworld. Though the connection was unexpected, it hinted at the potential the Coalition had promised. In another part of the world, a farmer found himself matched with a being from a water-dwelling species, its gelatinous form requiring a specialized containment suit to survive on land. Their initial meeting was strained, with neither able to communicate effectively. But as days passed, the farmer discovered that his new partner had a knack for solving mechanical problems, fixing equipment on the farm that had long been unreliable. While their relationship remained distant, it planted a seed of mutual respect. These stories were not universal, however. Many matches struggled, plagued by misunderstandings, cultural barriers, and outright refusal. Some humans balked at the idea of interspecies unions, while others were overwhelmed by the sheer strangeness of their new companions. Likewise, certain aliens found humans too unpredictable, their emotions and customs baffling. Despite the Coalition's efforts to frame the unions as a pathway to peace, skepticism lingered on both sides. Meanwhile, the Kralon fleet remained motionless, their silence stretching into an unbearable tension. Earth's militaries stood on high alert, but their limited technology was no match for even one alien fleet, let alone two. The Coalition urged restraint, insisting that any aggressive move would only escalate the situation. Yet, whispers of dissent began to grow. Could humanity trust the Coalition to protect them, or was it time to consider the Kralon's warning more seriously? Amid this uncertainty, an unexpected event shook the fragile calm. In the early hours of the morning, a Coalition vessel in low orbit was attacked. The explosion lit up the sky, a fiery reminder of how precarious the situation had become. While no official statement was immediately released, leaked footage suggested the attack came from the Kralon fleet. The Coalition responded with an emergency broadcast, condemning the act as proof of the Kralon's hostility. The attack had immediate consequences. Trust in the Coalition wavered, as many questioned why they hadn't foreseen such aggression. Protests erupted anew with demands for transparency about the aliens' motives and Earth's future. Rumors spread like wildfire, ranging from theories about the Coalition's true plans to wild claims that the Kralon were humanity's only allies. The lines between truth and speculation blurred, leaving the public in a state of anxious turmoil. At the heart of it all, a group of individuals quietly began to investigate the truth. They were an unlikely team: a journalist, a former military officer, a linguist, and a young coder with a knack for hacking. Brought together by circumstance, they shared one goal: to uncover the real purpose of the Union Accord. Each had their own reasons for joining the effort, whether personal loss, professional curiosity, or sheer defiance of the unknown. Together, they pieced together fragments of information, from encrypted messages intercepted between Coalition ships to ancient records buried deep in alien archives. What they found was startling. The Union Accord was indeed a safeguard, but not in the way the Coalition had implied. According to the documents, The marriages served as a means to diffuse genetic and cultural traits across the galaxy, creating bonds that would make it difficult for any species to wage war against another. Yet, buried in the text were mentions of a darker purpose, a reference to a galactic anchor and an ancient threat known only as the Void Progeny. The details were scarce, but the implication was clear. The Union Accord wasn't just about unity. It was a defense against something far older and far more dangerous than anyone on Earth could imagine. Their discovery raised more questions than it answered. What was the Void Progeny? And why had the Coalition been so secretive about its existence? More importantly, how did humanity fit into this puzzle? The team's investigation took on a new urgency, but time was not on their side. The Kralon fleet, now labeled as terrorists, showed no signs of retreating, and the Coalition's patience with Earth's growing unrest was beginning to wear thin. As tensions mounted, the young coder managed to decrypt a final piece of data, one that chilled the team to their core. The Kralon's warning had not been a simple act of defiance. It was a message, one Earth hadn't fully understood. Hidden in their broadcast was a sequence of symbols, now revealed to be coordinates that pointed to an ancient derelict ship drifting just beyond Earth's solar system. The ship, according to the decoded files, held the key to understanding both the Union Accord and the Void Progeny. But reaching it would mean defying the Coalition, risking everything to uncover the truth. As the team prepared to make their move, Earth's future hung by a thread. Would humanity follow the Coalition's path, accepting the marriages as a means to unity? Or would they listen to the Kralon's cryptic warning, diving headfirst into a mystery that could either save them or doom them all? The answer was out there, waiting in the cold, uncharted depths of space. The decision to seek out the derelict ship came with risks that none of the group could fully calculate. Every move felt like a step into the unknown, and every decision seemed weighted with potential catastrophe. The Coalition, vigilant as ever, had deployed orbital patrols, their ships gliding silently across Earth's skies. The Kralon remained motionless, but loomed like a storm on the horizon. For humanity, the stakes had never been higher, and for the team, the weight of the truth they were chasing grew heavier with every passing hour. The journalist took charge of assembling the plan, his experience in navigating dangerous situations proving invaluable. They managed to secure a small, unregistered spacecraft through a network of sympathetic engineers who believed that the Coalition's narrative didn't fully add up. The former military officer, with her extensive knowledge of alien technology and strategy, modified the ship to avoid detection, installing stealth capabilities that rivaled even the best surveillance system. Every moment they spent preparing felt stolen, a race against time as the Coalition's grip tightened and the Kralon's silence grew more foreboding. As the day of their departure approached, tensions within the group reached a breaking point. The linguist, burdened by the weight of what they might uncover, questioned the mission's morality. Were they chasing a truth humanity wasn't ready for? The coder, defiant and determined, countered that the people of Earth deserved to know what they were truly facing. The arguments grew heated, the stress of their precarious position pulling at the seams of their fragile alliance. But in the end, the journalist's steady voice broke through the noise. "We've come too far to turn back now," he said quietly. "If we don't do this, who will?" The launch itself was a moment of agonizing tension. Every system check, every signal ping, every flicker of light on the control panel seemed amplified by the knowledge that discovery could mean death or worse. As the ship lifted off under the cover of night, the Earth's surface fell away, replaced by the endless expanse of stars. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the rapid beating of hearts. They had made it off the ground, but the real danger was only just beginning. Navigating past the Coalition patrols required a delicate balance of skill and luck. The officer piloted the ship with precision, weaving through gaps in the patrol's coverage, while the coder monitored their stealth systems for even the slightest anomaly. More than once, the ship came dangerously close to being detected, the tension in the cabin so thick it was hard to breathe. Each time, they held their collective breath, waiting for the telltale flash of a Coalition scanner locking onto them. Miraculously, it never came. When they finally broke free of Earth's orbit, the sense of relief was fleeting. Ahead of them lay the coordinates, a point of light in the vast blackness of space that seemed both impossibly distant and tantalizingly close. The derelict ship, though not yet visible, felt like a magnetic presence drawing them forward. But as they approached, the sense of unease began to grow. The Kralon fleet, silent for weeks, had begun to stir. Their ships shifted subtly, their formation tightening as if they, too, were watching the coordinates. The team's fear of discovery was now compounded by a chilling realization. Whatever was out there, the Kralon wanted it just as much as they did. When the derelict ship finally came into view, it was unlike anything they had imagined. Its design was alien, even by the standards of the Coalition, and the Kralon an ancient, sprawling structure that seemed more organic than mechanical. Its surface was pockmarked with scars, evidence of battles fought long before humanity had ever existed. Strange, faint lights flickered along its edges, their patterns erratic and unsettling. The linguist, staring at the ship through the viewport, whispered what everyone else was thinking. It looks alive. As they drew closer, the ship's true scale became apparent. It was massive, dwarfing even the largest Coalition vessels. The team was awestruck, but their awe quickly gave way to dread. The coder's instruments began picking up strange signals emanating from the ship, bursts of data that defied analysis. It's speaking, the coder muttered, frantically trying to decode the patterns. But it's not in any language I've ever seen. The former officer guided their ship toward what appeared to be an entrance, a jagged tear in the derelict's surface that pulsed with an eerie light. The decision to board the ship was unanimous, though the fear in the cabin was palpable. Equipped with oxygen supplies, protective suits, and portable scanners, they entered the derelict cautiously, their every step echoing through the cavernous halls. The interior was a maze of twisting corridors and towering chambers, the architecture as alien as the exterior. Strange symbols adorned the walls, their meanings inscrutable yet oddly familiar. As they ventured deeper, the team began to experience inexplicable phenomena. Lights flickered and danced in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. The air, though thin and cold, carried a faint vibration as if the ship itself were alive and aware of their presence. The linguist's attempts to decipher the symbols grew frantic, their shapes and sequences gnawing at the edges of comprehension. "It's not just a language," he said, his voice trembling. "It's instructions. Warnings. I think this place was meant to be found." Their journey through the ship was punctuated by discoveries that raised more questions than answers. In one chamber, they found rows of what appeared to be stasis pods, their contents obscured by thick, frost-covered glass. In another, a console flickered to life, displaying a series of images and sounds that defied categorization. The journalist recorded everything, his mind racing with the implications. Whatever had happened here, it was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. As they reached the core of the ship, the signals from the Krylon fleet grew stronger. It was clear now that the Krylon were monitoring their every move, and the team's time was running out. The coder managed to access a central terminal, its interface, a swirling mass of light and sound that seemed to respond to touch and thought alike. Through a combination of intuition and trial and error, they unlocked a fragment of the ship's history, a holographic projection that filled the chamber with ghostly images. The projection showed a galaxy teeming with life, united under a vast, ancient alliance. But then came the Void progeny, an enemy so devastating that even the combined might of countless civilizations could not defeat it. The Union Accord, they realized, had been a desperate measure, a way to create bonds strong enough to withstand the progeny's influence. The derelict ship had been their final attempt to contain the threat, a weapon and a warning left adrift in the hope that it would never need to be used. Before they could process the implications, the ship shuddered violently. The Krylon had arrived. Their fleet, now surrounding the derelict, began deploying smaller vessels, their intentions clear. The team had uncovered the truth, but escaping with it would be another matter entirely. As alarms blared and the derelict systems flared to life, the team braced for what they knew would be their most dangerous challenge yet. The derelict ship shuddered again, its groaning metal reverberating through the cavernous chambers. The team exchanged panicked glances, their sense of urgency shifting into full-blown survival mode. The Krylon vessels were closing in, their intent unmistakable. Yet, the ship itself seemed to react as though alive, its lights pulsing rhythmically and walls shifting subtly, as if guiding the humans deeper into its heart. The former officer, taking the lead, urged the group forward, her voice steady despite the fear etched on her face. "If this ship is reacting to us, we need to trust it. It might be the only chance we have." As they followed the faint, glowing trails that appeared on the walls, the ship seemed to come alive in new and terrifying ways. Shadows darted across the periphery of their vision, shapes too fleeting to identify, but enough to raise the hairs on the back of their necks. The air grew colder, the vibrations stronger, and the sense of being watched became almost unbearable. The coder's voice trembled as they tried to interpret the data streaming from their handheld device. "The energy levels are spiking." The Krylon ships began firing concentrated energy bursts at the derelict, their intent not to destroy it, but to force entry. The blasts caused tremors that rippled through the structure, sending dust and fragments cascading from the ceilings. The journalist steadied himself against a wall, his mind racing. If the Krylon were this desperate to breach the ship, then the stakes were far higher than they'd realized. He caught up to the linguist, who was frantically studying the symbols that covered the walls. "What do these mean?" he demanded. "Is there something here the Krylon are afraid of?" The linguist hesitated, their voice barely above a whisper. "It's not fear. It's control. These symbols, they're part of a containment system. Whatever this ship was built to hold, it wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. And it's still here." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. The Void progeny, the ancient enemy that had devastated the galaxy, wasn't just a looming threat. It was a presence, contained but active, within the very walls of the derelict. The team's mission had gone from uncovering a truth to facing a reality far more dangerous than they'd imagined. The officer, her jaw tight, turned to the group. "We need to move. Now. If this thing breaks free, it won't matter who wins coalition, Krylon, humanity will all be gone." As they pushed forward, the path ahead led them to a vast central chamber. The room was unlike anything they had seen, its walls lined with glowing conduits, and an enormous structure at its center that pulsed with an eerie, shifting light. It resembled a cocoon suspended by massive, claw-like supports that seemed to tremble with latent energy. The coder's device beeped wildly, the readings incomprehensible. "This is it," they whispered. "This is what the ship was built around." Before they could act, the ship's vibrations intensified, and a low, guttural hum filled the air. The cocoon's light grew brighter, its pulsing rhythm accelerating. The linguist's eyes widened as they pieced together the final fragments of the symbols. "It's responding to us. Our presence is triggering a release sequence." The journalist felt his stomach drop. "We're waking it up." Before the linguist could answer, the ship shook violently, and the walls around them began to shift. Panels slid open, revealing strange insect-like drones that swarmed into the chamber. They moved with precision, surrounding the cocoon and emitting a high-pitched frequency that seemed to stabilize the structure. But their presence wasn't reassuring. It was a stark reminder of how precarious their situation had become. As the team tried to comprehend their next move, the Kralon breached the ship. Their soldiers, humanoid yet grotesque in their biomechanical armor, poured into the chamber with weapons drawn. The tension snapped like a taut wire, and chaos erupted. The officer barked orders, her military instincts kicking in as she pulled the others behind cover. Energy blasts lit up the chamber, their bright flashes reflecting off the cocoon's surface. The Kralon seemed less interested in the humans and more focused on overriding the drones, their intent clear. They wanted to control whatever was inside. The coder, shielded by the journalist, worked feverishly on their device, trying to interface with the ship's systems. "I think I can lock them out," they said, their fingers flying across the screen. "But I need more time." The officer provided cover, her stolen alien weapon humming with each shot. "You've got 2 minutes, tops," she yelled over the chaos. "Make it count." As the battle raged, the cocoon emitted a deep, resonant sound that silenced the chamber for a fleeting moment. Everyone, human, Kralon, even the drones froze as the light from the cocoon intensified, casting long, distorted shadows. The linguist stared in horror. "It's not just waking up," they said, their voice barely audible. "It's reaching out." The journalist turned to the coder. "Can you stop it?" The coder shook their head, their expression grim. "This isn't something we can control. The ship's systems are too advanced. It's like trying to reprogram a sun." The cocoon's light began to pulse in waves, each one sending a jolt through the chamber. The Kralon soldiers, realizing the situation was spiraling out of their control, turned their weapons on the cocoon itself. But their blasts were absorbed harmlessly, the structure seemingly impervious to their attacks. The officer seized the opportunity, leading the team toward a makeshift escape route revealed by the ship's shifting walls. As they fled, the ship's vibrations reached a crescendo, and a voice deep, resonant, and unmistakably alien echoed through the chamber. It spoke not in words, but in emotions, a wave of dread and fury that washed over everyone. The linguist collapsed, clutching their head. "It's ancient. And it's angry." The journalist pulled them to their feet, his mind racing. Whatever was inside the cocoon was far more than a simple weapon or entity. It was a force, a remnant of something humanity was never meant to encounter. The ship itself seemed to be reacting, its corridors closing off and rerouting as if trying to contain the impending catastrophe. But as the team sprinted through the shifting halls, they realized the Kralon weren't their only problem. The coalition had arrived, their ships piercing through the Kralon's blockade and boarding the derelict in force. The coalition's soldiers, more methodical and precise, began engaging both the Kralon and the ship's defenses, their goal unclear. The team's fragile hope of escaping unnoticed evaporated as they found themselves caught in a three-way battle. The officer led them down a side passage, her instincts keeping them one step ahead of the chaos. But as they reached what they hoped was an exit, a massive explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered, and the humming vibrations stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence that was somehow more terrifying. The cocoon had been breached. Something ancient and unknowable had been unleashed. The silence was suffocating, more profound than any battle's chaos. The team stood frozen, the weight of the moment sinking in as they realized the cocoon had finally opened. A soft, pulsating glow emerged from the heart of the ship, spilling through the derelict's halls like liquid light. It wasn't an explosion or a violent force that followed, it was something far more insidious. The glow carried an overwhelming presence, something that brushed against their minds, whispering thoughts they couldn't fully comprehend. It was ancient, intelligent, and terrifyingly aware. The officer snapped everyone back to reality with a sharp command. Move. Whatever that is. We don't want to be here when it finishes waking up. The team scrambled forward, but the shifting corridors now seemed more like a trap than a guide. The ship wasn't letting them go. It was hurting them, pushing them closer to the source of the light. The journalist noticed it first. The paths ahead kept narrowing, leading to a single destination. "It's not just waking up," he said, his voice shaking. "It's calling us." Behind them, the Coalition and Kralon forces were still locked in combat, their desperate efforts to control the ship's systems futile. Drones swarmed around them, redirecting their attacks and sealing off routes. But even they faltered as the presence grew stronger. Soldiers dropped their weapons, some clutching their heads, others retreating in blind panic. The Kralon, for all their confidence, began to splinter under the weight of the entity's mind. The team stumbled into a massive chamber, the heart of the ship. The cocoon, now fully open, revealed not a creature, but a swirling mass of energy and matter, shifting and coalescing in ways that defied logic. It was beautiful and horrifying, a living paradox that radiated power. The linguist fell to their knees, tears streaming down their face. "It's not just alive," they whispered. "It's a fragment of something greater, a remnant of the void progeny." The officer pulled them back to their feet, her voice sharp. "Whatever it is, it's not staying here. If it gets loose, it's over for all of us." She turned to the coder. "Can you do anything? Shut it down. Contain it. Anything." The coder hesitated, their hands trembling as they scanned the alien systems. "There's something. A failsafe. The ship was built to contain it, but activating it might destroy the entire vessel and us with it." The journalist stepped forward, his voice firm despite his fear. "If we don't, it won't matter. That thing isn't just dangerous. It's apocalyptic." As they argued, the presence began to take shape. A humanoid figure emerged from the energy, translucent and flickering, its features shifting between alien and eerily familiar forms. It spoke, not in words, but in concepts, an overwhelming flood of memories, emotions, and intent. The linguist gasped, trying to translate. It was imprisoned here, not as punishment, but as protection. It's searching for a host, a connection, something to anchor it. The officer raised her weapon, aiming it at the figure. "We can't let it find one." Before she could fire, the figure extended an arm and the weapon dissolved into dust. The presence turned its attention to the team, its gaze piercing and unrelenting. They felt it probing their thoughts, sifting through their fears and memories. It paused, focusing on the journalist. "You've seen truth," it projected into his mind. "You carry the weight of choice." The journalist staggered back, his head pounding as the entity's voice echoed inside him. "Why me?" he managed to choke out. But deep down, he knew. He had been searching for answers, for purpose, and now he stood on the edge of a decision that could change everything. The coder interrupted, their voice urgent. "The failsafe is ready, but I need confirmation to activate it. Once it starts, there's no turning back." The journalist turned to the officer, his face pale. "If we destroy the ship, we lose everything. The research, the knowledge, everything we came here for." The officer's jaw tightened. "If we don't, that thing gets loose. There won't be anyone left to care about what we found." The linguist, still trembling, spoke up. "There's another way. It doesn't want destruction. It wants understanding. If we can communicate, if we can reason with it." The chamber shook violently as the Kralon breached the perimeter, their weapons aimed directly at the entity. Their leader shouted commands, their voice full of desperation. "Take it. It belongs to us." The presence reacted, its form shifting into something monstrous. The room filled with an ear-splitting roar as the energy lashed out, disintegrating the nearest Kralon soldiers in an instant. The remaining ones hesitated, their bravado crumbling. The team watched in horror as the entity's form grew more unstable, its power threatening to consume everything. The journalist made his decision. He stepped forward, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Stop!" he shouted, drawing the presence's attention. "We don't need to fight. If you're searching for connection, for meaning, we can help you. But not like this." The presence paused, its form flickering. The ship itself seemed to respond, the walls vibrating with a low hum. The coder hesitated, their finger hovering over the activation sequence for the failsafe. "Are you sure about this?" they asked. The journalist nodded, locking eyes with the presence. "We don't need to destroy you, but you need to trust us." For a moment, everything was still. The presence seemed to consider his words, its form stabilizing slightly. But before it could respond, the Kralon leader lunged forward, activating a device in their hand. A surge of energy shot toward the entity, causing it to convulse violently. The ship groaned as the containment systems began to collapse. The officer reacted instantly, firing at the Kralon leader and knocking them down. But the damage was done. The entity's form began to destabilize again, its power spiraling out of control. The coder, their face set with determination, activated the failsafe. "I'm sorry," they whispered. "It's the only way." The chamber filled with light as the ship's systems engaged, creating a containment field that began to compress the entity back into the cocoon. The team ran, the walls closing in behind them as the failsafe triggered a chain reaction. Explosions rippled through the derelict, and the team barely made it to the escape pods before the entire vessel collapsed in on itself, imploding in a brilliant flash of light. As they drifted in space, watching the remnants of the ship fade into nothingness, the team sat in silence. The journalist stared out the viewport, his mind racing. Had they done the right thing? Had they truly saved the galaxy, or had they destroyed something they couldn't fully understand? The officer placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression unreadable. Sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones. But as the pods were picked up by a coalition rescue ship, the journalist couldn't shake the feeling that the entity's presence hadn't been entirely extinguished. Somewhere, in the depths of the void, it was waiting, watching, and perhaps, one day, it would return. The silence in the coalition rescue ship was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. The team sat scattered in the common room, each lost in their thoughts. The hum of the ship's engines filled the void, a reminder that they were still alive, but it did little to ease the weight pressing down on their hearts. The journalist looked out of the small window, watching as the stars slipped by, their cold indifference a sharp contrast to the turmoil within him. He couldn't help but replay the final moments aboard the alien vessel. Had they made the right decision? Could there have been another way? The officer leaned against the wall, her arms crossed tightly. She hadn't spoken much since the escape, her usual commanding presence diminished. Her eyes darted toward the linguist, who was staring at their hands as if searching for answers in their trembling fingers. "We need to debrief," the officer finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady but lacked the authority it usually carried. "We owe it to ourselves, and to everyone else, to figure out what happened back there." The coder nodded, their face pale but resolute. The failsafe worked, but not perfectly. The containment field compressed the entity, but it didn't destroy it entirely. I picked up residual signals as we escaped. It's fractured, scattered, but still present in some form. The linguist looked up, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and awe. It wasn't just a threat. It was something beyond our understanding. We treated it like a monster because we didn't know what else to do. But what if it was reaching out? What if it wasn't trying to harm us, but to communicate? The officer sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. It didn't exactly give us a choice. The Kralon triggered the cascade, and we were out of time. We did what we had to do to survive. The journalist finally turned away from the window, his voice quieter than usual. But at what cost? That ship wasn't just a prison. It was a repository of knowledge, a bridge to something far greater than ourselves. And now it's gone. The room fell silent again, the weight of their collective doubts pressing down them. It was a heaviness none of them could shake, not even as they reached the coalition's nearest outpost and were greeted with cheers and relief from the waiting crew. They were hailed as heroes, their actions framed as a decisive victory against a threat that could have destroyed entire worlds. But the accolades felt hollow. The team knew the truth was far more complicated. In the days that followed, each member of the team grappled with their own questions. The coder buried themselves in the ship's logs and data fragments, trying to piece together any remnants of the alien technology they had encountered. The linguists spent hours poring over their notes, searching for patterns in the entity's communications, hoping to uncover some hint of its true intentions. The officer attended endless debriefings, her stoic exterior masking the doubts gnawing at her resolve. The journalist, meanwhile, struggled with how to tell the story. The official reports painted a clear narrative. They had contained a dangerous alien entity and prevented it from escaping into the galaxy. But he couldn't ignore the nuances, the uncertainties, the possibilities of what might have been lost. Weeks turned into months, and life moved on. The galaxy, as always, seemed indifferent to the struggles of individuals. New crises arose. New discoveries were made, and the memory of the derelict ship began to fade from public consciousness. But for the team, it remained a defining moment, a turning point that left its mark on each of them. The linguist eventually published a paper on their findings, framing the entity not as a malevolent force, but as a being caught between dimensions, its actions misunderstood rather than malicious. It sparked debate among academics and scientists, challenging long-held assumptions about the nature of alien life. The coder's work on the ship's data led to breakthroughs in containment technology, advancements that would shape future encounters with unknown entities. The officer, though she rarely spoke of the mission, became a staunch advocate for better protocols and training for interspecies encounters, determined to prevent another situation like the one they had faced. The journalist, however, took a different path. After months of wrestling with how to tell the story, he finally published a piece that blended fact and reflection. He didn't shy away from the complexity of what they had encountered, the mistakes they had made, or the lingering questions that remained unanswered. He wrote about the fragility of understanding, the fine line between fear and curiosity, and the choices that define us in the face of the unknown. The piece resonated deeply, sparking conversations across the galaxy and inspiring others to look beyond fear when confronting the unfamiliar. And then, one day, something unexpected happened. The coder, now working in a remote research station, received an anomalous signal. It was faint, barely detectable, but unmistakably familiar. They ran it through every filter, every algorithm, and finally confirmed what they had suspected. It was a fragment of the entity's consciousness, still alive, still reaching out. They contacted the team immediately, and for the first time in months, they all found themselves together again, staring at the decoded message. It wasn't a threat or a warning. It was a question, a single, simple question that sent chills down their spines. "Are you ready?" The officer's jaw tightened as she looked at the message. "Ready for what?" she asked, her voice filled with both dread and curiosity. The linguist, their voice trembling, replied to try again. The team exchanged glances, the weight of the decision settling over them. The journalist felt his pulse quicken, a mix of fear and hope surging through him. "We have a choice," he said quietly. "We always have a choice." This time, they wouldn't run. They wouldn't fight out of fear. They would listen, learn, and try to understand. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries and challenges, but it was also full of possibilities. And in that moment, they made their decision not as individuals, but as a team, united by their shared experiences and the belief that even in the face of the unknown, humanity's greatest strength was its capacity for connection. As they prepared to respond to the signal, each of them felt a quiet resolve. The journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning, and whatever lay ahead, they would face it together.